Send a tweet.
All right, welcome to the 30th annual edition, whatever you want to call it, of the Trekkie Awards. This is not going to be our normal stream on Trek Live. This is kind of a special occasion. So, with that being said, Bill, how you doing this morning?
Doing good. Doing good. Looking forward to this. I've been working on this for a little while, trying to sort out how I feel about the episodes, and I watched the season again, right up to the finale, with the Trekkie Award kind of cap on, trying to piece together, what deserves the citation for cinematography or
Right.
visual effects, score, all that stuff. So I feel pretty good about it. I'm sure, like always, if I come back to this next year or in 5 years, I would pick all kinds of different things. That's just the nature of the beast. So really looking forward to kind of capping off our conversations about season 2 with this. Doing surface level stuff like ranking the episodes and Trekkie Awards, just to kind of put the season in perspective and have different kinds of conversations. We've covered all the episodes and talked about them as they aired, and even in those conversations, talked about where they fit in the season and big picture stuff. And I feel like this will be a cool way to wrap up the season 2 Discovery talk for a little while before we head into our more traditional old school topics.
Yep. We figured we just kind of we'll go through the rankings and stuff like that also, but we'll also go through kind of each category and what was nominated, and then obviously the winners. So super excited for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely really excited to dive in. What do you want to do first? How do you want to kick this off?
I think we should start with the kind of awards, and then go to rankings later on for kind of bigger picture and how the season was structured and how it ranked and everything. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Do we want to start at the bottom? Do we kind of want to go random? How do you? We didn't really talk about this in advance, where we go in, or. But I'm game for anything.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Let's start from the bottom. So I think it's
okay.
Visual effects, I believe.
Visual effects.
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. What do we have here? So for visual effects, I nominated Brother, the season premiere, Project Daedalus, and Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. So obviously 3 really effects heavy episodes. Mm-hmm. The finale obviously has a ton going on with big battle sequence. Brother's got a lot with a lot of beauty shots of the Enterprise and Discovery together, kind of establishing those two ships in relation to each other, and the asteroid field and all that cool stuff. And then Project Daedalus has the really cool. We thought it was cool. Minefield up to Section 31 headquarters situation, which really I think kind of drives the nomination in this category for that episode. So I guess my first question will go to you. Of those 3 episodes, does one stand out? What would you vote for if?
Well, it's something that stands out to me is that the nominated episodes are the premiere, and then the the first episode and last episode in the season, and I think that's kind of a testament to kind of those episodes tend to be a little bit more effects heavy, a little bit bigger. So I think that's definitely something that kind of jumped out at me first off. Yeah, I mean, I could go into what I think, at least my pick, what should be a winner, is what should be the winner. But yeah, that's the first thing that jumped out at me when I look at those 3 episodes. which are on the screen right now, as far
Mm-hmm.
as well as everything all the episodes that were nominated.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, with visual effects, obviously Discovery is huge in scale, and it's very effects driven. So a lot of these episodes had things in them that had me thinking, the visual effects nomination in play. Certainly episodes like Ennoble for Sharon. I think all the ship shots of the ship with the sphere are really gorgeous. So that, while it's not as like effects driven an episode on the forefront, that has some really beautiful stuff in it. I think Saints of Imperfection has some really cool stuff in it with the sort of water effect of the ship being stuck between the mycelial network and our universe, and even Perpetual Infinity with the Burnham's mother being like trapped, and like that battle sequence at the end where all hell's kind of breaking loose and the wormhole opens up on top of the little plot of ground where Burnham's mother's being held in place. There's some really cool, maybe more practical effects stuff happening there during that fight sequence on the planet. So there are quite a few directions you could go in here, but these are the three that I felt like stood out the most, I guess. So what would you vote for? Like, what would your choice for the winner be?
My choice would be Such Sweet Sorrow, part 2. Because it felt big. I think that it had a lot of visual effects, like great ship shots. Not just like a battle sequence. I mean, it was a great battle sequence, but we saw great ship shots and cool things, visual effects with traveling back in time. That kind of counts as visual effects. So I think it has a lot more elements to it that I think it definitely sets it over the top for sure.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2 is the winner in this category for me, and it was pretty easy. Brother was in the lead spot up until this episode aired, but when the battle sequence is such a huge thing that's kind of maybe unmatched in Star Trek history, as far as like just extended large scale action ship battle stuff. But even beyond that, we talked about it last week. Burnham's jump through the wormhole is maybe my favorite moment in the episode and in the conversation for my favorite stuff in the season. So you have everything from like big ship battle stuff to Burnham's jump, and all the stuff with the Enterprise. Rob just mentioned seeing the Enterprise in such glory like that in a big battle. In TOS, you don't get a whole lot of that. You get the Doomsday Machine, but because of the nature of that show and the production limitations that were there, you didn't get to see the Enterprise kick a whole lot of rear end in TOS. And in Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, you definitely get that. So that's surely the winner for me. I'd say Brother would be number 2. Project Daedalus would be number 3. And then, like I said, episodes like Saints of Imperfection and maybe Perpetual Infinity would be like on the cusp of getting that nomination if I had to sub something in.
Right.
So Rob's in the chat. Let me know. Let us know. Visual effects. We're kind of working our way upward on this chart with all the nominations kind of on the screen. We just did visual effects. We're gonna work our way up all the way to best episode and talk about Dan's pick for the winner, my pick for the winner, thought process picking the nominations, all that good stuff. So please feel free to share any thoughts. Is there something missing? What would you pick to win? I want to hear everything. So we have a graphic now showing the winner as Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. You sure did.
Okay, good. There we
go. So I guess moving on to the musical score. This, Discovery can be kind of difficult with music.
Yes.
One of the things I've noticed, Discovery does what TOS did. They loop a lot of music. Like they use old music a lot. A lot of themes from season 1 came back in season 2 and were used in big moments, and things that were like originally appeared in say New Eden come back and appear in other episodes. So sometimes picking what's original in each episode can be kind of difficult. So I try to pick like original music that's like first appearing um, in the show as episode. Like, that's what I try to go with these categories. And because Discovery, unlike some of the older Trek,
Right.
is written by one composer, so it all kind of has similar sound. Unlike Berman era Trek, where there are different composers kind of rotating in and out.
Right.
You got to really kind of pay attention, I think, to do the music thing. But I went with Brother, the Red Angel, and Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. Brother obviously establishes a lot of the musical themes of season 2. There are a lot of the Pike theme, the Red Angel theme, all that stuff kind of comes into play in Brother. The Red Angel, there's some really good music in that last chunk of the episode when Burnham is getting sat down in that chair and they're gonna do their thing. There's some really tense, different music that we hadn't heard before in that episode. So that was an easy pick for me. And then Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, there's obviously a lot of new stuff too with the action music. There's some really cool TOS nods thrown in there, bringing back the Alexander Courage music. So there are my 3 picks. Just to kind of throw out there a couple of honorable mentions, I guess. An Oboe for Sharon has a lot of good music in it. That is original. New Eden has some really good music in it. Project Daedalus has some really good music in it. They would have been my honorable mentions. Even Point of Light, actually, I think has some cool, unusual music in it. Rob asks, does Saru's song count as musical score? Let's count it. It's in the Red Angel, so it's part of why. I guess maybe that's why I'm thinking music in the Red Angel. Yeah. I know music's not totally your wheelhouse in these things, but does something stand out to you as more deserving than the others? Any strong thoughts in any way?
I would just go ahead and do my pick. You're right. Music really isn't my thing. But when I kind of look back at it, you kind of mentioned Brother, and that's my pick. I think it definitely set the tone for the rest of the season. And I think that's important in an episode and when thinking about an awards. So my pick is Brother because it kind of set the tone for kind of the rest of the season. So
yeah, Brother was really hard for me to walk away from. I had Brother highlighted for a long time. I did end up going with Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. And maybe it's because of those TOS touches and some of the big cues with the Enterprise in battle. It kind of just tickled me in a way that is kind of unique. So maybe it's really biased, but Brother is certainly very worthy. This was a really tough call for me because it does establish so many of the themes that kind of echo throughout the season. But I think Such Sweet Sorrow has a lot of big musical moments in it. I'm thinking of that last sequence on the Enterprise, like the last 5 minutes of the episode. I think there's a lot of really cool music in that. That last shot of the Enterprise warping off with the red signal kind of pulsating in the distance really stuck with me. But this was a tough call. I think all 3 of these are if you go back and rewatch those episodes and have an ear for the music, I think all 3 will stand out, and I think all 3 are worthy of a win, let alone a nomination. So totally hear you on Brother. I could have easily done that and felt good about it, but I'm going to go with Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2 for now. Like I said, if I rewatch and do this again in 2021 or something, it could very well change, like these things always do. All right. Film editing. Film editing is a tough one for me because I'm not a film editor.
Right.
Most you got to be in the weeds and doing it to really have an eye for it. Yeah. But I do my best. I try to kind of pay attention to these things, and I feel like I have an amateur's eye for, a reasonable eye as an amateur, I guess. Somebody who doesn't do it for a living. But I went with If Memory Serves, An Oboe for Sharon, and Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. And my line of thinking here, kind of different things for each one. Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2 is obviously, very action heavy, very, very lot of momentum, really fast pace. but touching a lot of things, like having to convey a lot of different ideas and different things happening, giving a lot of characters their moments, when to pop into this, when to pop out of that. Very much in play with that episode. And Noble for Sharon, I feel like is actually kind of similar. That's like an old school Star Trek episode with,
yes, very.
A lot of different storylines happening at once. You have, Saru's, Varai, I can never pronounce it, but his syndrome that he's dealing with. You have all the stuff on the bridge, just trying to figure out what's going on with the sphere, and you have Tilly, Stamets, and Reno in engineering. And I feel like the episode, whenever I go back and watch it again, it's so well balanced. Like I feel like all of those storylines, I feel like they get paid off. I feel like I get enough time in all of them. I feel like it bounces around at a really good rhythm. And it's really well paced for a really jam-packed episode with a lot of dialogue as well. It's really not an action episode. It's a really dialogue-heavy, character-heavy episode. And I just love the pacing of it. And I love the way it balances so many things happening at once. And if memory serves, does some really unique stuff with editing, with flashbacks and the Telosians mind probing people, and some really unique stuff with the Burnham and Spock flashback in particular, with cutting to different versions of it, with the adult actors playing it out and the kid actors playing it out. And, that also is jumping around a lot. You have the stuff on Talos 4, you have the storyline with Stamets and Culber trying to put their life back together again. You have Pike and Tyler kind of fighting over what to do with Section 31. And similar to Noble for Sharon, I just feel like it covers its bases really well and keeps things moving while having a lot of balls in the air at once. So what do you think? Do you have a strong opinion on film editing this season?
I think they did a great job. I think that they did a great job of making the episodes really feel consistently kind of edited similar in that a lot of it is paced really well. Most of these episodes didn't feel super long or super short. They felt relatively balanced as far as editing goes. If I'll have to lean one way or the other, I think my pick is If Memory Serves, because you mentioned it. I mean, the editor has a bunch of stuff that he has to kind of piece together in the story. You got flashbacks, you got present day, you got different storylines going out through the episode. I like the shot selection that they kind of went with, as far as the establishing shots, on Talos 4, with the length of those shots, let the audience see this, this great set that they kind of designed. So I think my pick is If Memory Serves.
Yeah, mine too. I went with If Memory Serves. I feel like it's the most, maybe the sexiest pick of the bunch, because it's the most like overtly, uniquely edited episode, I guess, with all that flashback stuff. I think it really weaves all that stuff in really nicely, and it stands out as different. It's not cookie cutter, flashback stuff. You cut into like somebody, it doesn't do like the Lost thing where it like jumps into like somebody's eye and it goes to a flashback.
Yeah,
it's kind of unique and different the way that it conveys that flashback idea. So yeah, If Memory Serves is my pick. Some honorable mentions, I guess, would be Brother is another one that is juggling a lot of things.
Yeah,
is really well paced. I think Project Daedalus has a lot of stuff happening in it. That action sequence on the bridge with the minefield is certainly really memorable, and I think that's cut really well. That episode is loaded with these like really impactful like one-on-one scenes between characters. So that's a jam-packed episode too, where it's balancing a lot of different things, a lot of different kinds of scenes. So Project Daedalus is another one that I had a hard time kind of leaving off.
Yeah.
So I guess costume design.
Yes, best costume design.
We have If Memory Serves, Point of Light, and The Sound of Thunder. And I guess the common theme with these three episodes is that they all kind of take place on alien planets.
Yeah.
With some previously things like obviously Point of Light does a lot of cool stuff with the Klingons. A lot of cool Klingon costumes, different kinds of Klingon costumes than we're used to in Discovery from the first season. establishing that new look, like out of wartime. I think there's a lot of really good looking stuff there. If memory serves, obviously brings back the Telosians and Vina, and uses costume design to kind of make us believe that we're looking at the same, characters that we saw 52 years ago, played by different actors. And the Sound of Thunder establishes the Kelpian, home life. That's obviously a different look than anything we've gotten in Discovery before. We obviously saw it in The Brightest Star as well, but we get a lot of it in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, what stands out to you in this category?
The alien planet thing. I think that there's like you said, there's a common theme of that in this category, which I feel like is kind of normal because I don't know. It just seems like that to me. Yeah, I mean, my pick is If Memory Serves, because I think they did a great job of keeping, building off what we've done before, but kind of bringing a new, fresh perspective on it that I think really works as far as costume design. So I'm going with If Memory Serves.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I had a hard time with this one too. I could have any of the three ways.
Yeah.
Even just kind of talking about it and rationalizing the nominations, I found myself like, should it be If Memory Serves? But I did go with The Sound of Thunder just because it's the most original, I guess, of the three.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like totally new idea. Klingon stuff and Point of Light we've obviously seen before, and If Memory Serves is certainly, the Telosians are not a species that have been played with a lot in the Star Trek universe, but
Mm-hmm.
it's more about recapturing what we know from the past, and they did it beautifully. And it's like I said, I was kind of talking myself into that should be the one, but I'll go with The Sound of Thunder just because it's a brand new creation for Discovery.
Right.
It really establishes who the Kelpians are. I think their costumes tell you who they are and the kind of people they are and the kind of life they live. For in a 45, 48 minute episode that is trying to do a lot of other things too. Things like costume design really help to tell you like what kind of people the Kelpians are, and what kind of life they live. So I'll go with that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough call. Point of Light, whenever I watch, as we're going to talk about in the rankings, Point of Light, it's not my favorite episode of the season by any means, but the costume design in that is pretty impressive. You get a lot of different Klingons. You can tell the different houses by their costumes, but it's not the same as it was in season one. They're not wearing this body armor. It's much more casual attire. So it's kind of reinventing the whole Klingon look. So even that was a hard one to walk away from. But these three really feel right to me. I tried to come up with like some honorable mentions, and you can certainly go with like New Eden. They're on a planet there, and there's humans living on that planet wearing obviously Star Trek gear,
Right.
but it's pretty casual, like it's pretty standard civilian stuff. Nothing that I think approaches the three that are on the screen now with like new original creations.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel pretty good about these three being the ones that stand out most from costume design.
Yep.
Moving into art direction, we have Point of Light, Such We Saw Part 1, and Through the Valley of Shadows. We get two Klingon episodes, two totally different Klingon settings. We have Kronos, L'Orel's chamber, and that big stage. She has the Klingon baby head and Ash Tyler's head. That's a memorable set piece.
Yep.
Through the Valley of Shadows, you obviously have the Boreth temple, which is really impressive. A lot of really cool shots in that episode, impressive sets.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Such Sweet Sorrow Part 1 is where we see the new Enterprise bridge and all that stuff. It's kind of self-explanatory there.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts?
This is one of the tougher categories for me because I feel like art direction is so strong again in season 2, so this is definitely going to be a tough pick for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones too
Yeah.
that I didn't get to choose. Brother has a lot of cool stuff. That they established the Sarek house in that they kind of go
Mm-hmm.
back to it in other episodes
Yeah.
through flashbacks. Light and Shadow, they go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's got that. Um, New Eden, obviously, there's a lot of location
Right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The Red Angel, I think I like that they're on that big like factory abandoned dilithium mine, or not dilithium. What's the thing they're always looking for in Voyager? That powers the ships. Deuterium, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get that big set in the Red Angel, and even in Perpetual Infinity. That's an impressive location. If memory serves, has a lot of cool production design.
Yes.
So Discovery, like visual effects, production design, they spend a lot of money on these things, and it leads to tough choices in these categories.
Yeah.
But if you had to choose a winner, what would you?
If I had to choose a winner, it's tough because I'm trying not to do this, but I would have to go with Such Sweet Sorrow Part 1 because of that bridge. It has the Enterprise effect where it just takes the cake. It's tough because I wanted to do Boreth and Through the Valley of Shadows, but I love the Klingon stuff, but that bridge takes the cake. So
yeah, I went with Such Sweet Sorrow Part 1 too. Really hard to walk away from. It feels kind of like a cheat to some extent.
Yeah.
But it's really not. We talked about it the week that aired when we summed up that episode. They had to spend a lot of money on that.
Yes.
Whether or not they spent a lot of money and went all out because it's more than a one-time use thing, or like you said, if you're going to do this, you got to do it completely right. You have to sink a lot of money into it if you're going to recreate the Enterprise, the original Enterprise, let alone any Enterprise. So they clearly put a ton of resources into it. The vast majority of fans, I feel like, were very receptive to it. It was not a controversial thing at all. Which is amazing to kind of say that push back to the recreation of that set. Because it is a little different. They did split it up, but in the way that we've always talked about it on our show here. We feel like the right way to do these kinds of things is to redesign things with the mindset of what would they have done with more money, more resources, and not get too
not get too cute.
Do it. Yeah, don't get cute. Don't redesign. Take the same design and spruce it up and do a little extra with it. And that's what this was. So I have to go with that. But the two Klingon things, Point of Light and Through the Valley of Shadows, are both, I feel like, are good nominees. Feel worthy of those nominations. If my second place would probably be Through the Valley of Shadows. That Boreth
yes.
monastery set. I feel like, and it's not just one set. Like, you get different over the course of that episode, different points in time where the Pike's down there with that Klingon walking through it. It's diverse and really big. It feels really big. So that was a tough. If Such Sweet Sorrow didn't successfully recreate the Enterprise, that would have. But I feel good about that. So the last of our technical categories before we get into more heavy hitters that kind of define the best episodes. I think best cinematography. We have, if memory serves, The Sound of Thunder and Through the Valley of Shadows. The cinematography, similarly to a lot of these other categories, Discovery is such a big production, with a lot of resources that, there's a lot of good choices here. If memory serves, there's a lot of memorable cinematography in that. We talked about it, I think, the week it aired, that it's really kind of gutsy with the way it's lit and the way the camera moves. And there's some, like you mentioned it, even with the editing, some of the shot choices to establish Talos 4. And I feel like even the scenes on the Enterprise, or on the Discovery. Yeah. The director of that episode, who's also nominated in this category, he also directed The Wolf Inside last season. He did a lot of the same things, like these wide angle, long shots that really establish a deep perspective, I guess. There's a lot of that in this episode. I'm thinking of, like, there's a really cool shot of Burnham walking into the shuttle with Dina inside, where the shuttle feels really long.
Yeah.
Like that's cool. All the stuff outside on Talos 4, the forced perspective set of the chamber inside of like down underground in Talos 4 with the Telosians. That all looks really cool. I'm thinking of the shots. There's a shot.
Is this your pick or no? Just kidding.
This is my pick.
Yeah,
it will ultimately be my
tell.
pick. I'm giving it away.
Yeah.
There's a great shot of Culber and Tyler fighting. Yeah, it's a gorgeous episode, and that's why it's here. But the Sound of Thunder has a lot of really cool stuff too on Kaminar, and in the Baul chamber. Notice that it's not in production design. If you go back to our episode on the Sound of Thunder, we kind of noticed that I think everybody noticed that that Kelpian chamber, or that Kelpian, the Baul chamber is a very obvious redress of the transporter room. Certainly took me out of the episode a little bit, but it's certainly well shot. There's some really cool lighting in that, with the reveal of the Baul, whether or not it's the real Baul or a projection, who knows, but the thing that looks like Armis, that looks really awesome. I think there's some really cool cinematography there. And then through the Valley of Shadows, those shots of the flashback with Pike, that shot of him in the hallway with the chair coming out, that really stands out to me as like an all-time great Star Trek visual. What do you think?
Your pick is my pick. If memory serves, I think I picked it because all the things you mentioned, great shots. I think the cinematography and the shots aided the story in giving these big, beautiful establishing shots that aided the story in making us feel like we were back and being able to highlight this iconic planet that we've seen before. So I think that's kind of what tips me over the edge as far as the cinematography category goes. So
yeah, that's where I am too. I just kind of give my intro. I got very carried away talking about how much I love the cinematography and the visual language of, if memory serves. So I feel really good about that pick. But some honorable mentions. Episode 2 were New Eden. There's a lot of cool looking stuff in New Eden, I think. Brother, obviously, and Such Sweet Sorrow. Both parts, I think there's a lot of cool stuff. But a lot of good choices there. Getting into some hot and heavy stuff. Best Director, we have Memory Serves, TJ Scott. We have Jonathan Frakes as a dual nominee for his 2 episodes, New Eden and Project Daedalus. Lee Rose for An Oval for Sharon, and Olatunde Osunsami for Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. These are noticeably the 5 episodes I picked for best episode, a little bit up the chain. I kind of stuck with the 5 for me. I don't want to get too into it because I'll talk about it in best episode, but I'll just go to you. What do you think? What stands out to you as the choice?
Well, it's tough because what stands out to me is obviously the legendary Jonathan Frakes. I think any episode that he is associated with in any way, shape, or form turns into a great episode. Exhibit A here on the chart. He has 2 episodes. His 2 episodes up there. So that's what stands out to me. As far as my pick goes, usually when I see Best Director, it usually follows with Best Episode, so maybe that's a teaser. But my pick is If Memory Serves. I think I think there's great direction in not just, like the technical side of it, like we've talked about with Best Cinematography and editing and costume design and all that, but I think that the characters, what they were going through, what the Spock and Burnham, the director has to kind of get that out of the actors and help them, get their best performances. Also showing their best performances with the camera and the shot selection. So I think it's If Memory Serves.
Yeah, I'll just say, just kind of give a quick. I feel like I should throw a little bit of love to each of the nominees. I'll just say Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, obviously all the great visual stuff that we talked about in some of those other categories. That episode moves like a freight train, a lot of great action. I think of that, the way he pulled off that Inception style rotating set action sequence with Giorgio and Leland and Nan. I thought that was really cool. Project Daedalus with Frakes. That's such a well balanced episode with scenes like Spock and Burnham playing chess, like just complete dialogue driven, character focused scenes, and you have this huge fight scene on the Section 31 station with Arium, kicking the crap out of Burnham and Nan. It covers the gamut. It does everything Star Trek should do. It's got great action. It's got great character stuff. I think he pulls both off equally well. New Eden is such a throwback to old school Star Trek. It's probably the one time this season I really legitimately felt like I was watching like 90s for Star Trek. And I feel like he got that pacing just right. It seemed so right that he would be the one that would direct that episode because he brought such that TNG kind of sensibility to it. And A Noble for Sharon is, like I talked about in editing, this is just a well balanced episode. There's so much cool visual stuff in it with the effects and the cinematography, with a lot of really cool camera movement. Because it is such a dialogue driven episode. I feel like she did a lot to keep it moving and keep it visually interesting and balance all the different storylines. And I feel like she handled the Tilly stuff in engineering particularly well. I love that scene. I feel like every time we go to that episode, it really jumps out. But if memory serves, just like with what I said with the editing and the cinematography, I just feel like it's such a visually exciting episode of Star Trek, with the flashbacks, with the cool establishing shots. The scene that always pops to mind when I think of that scene where Pike is in his quarters or in the ready room, and Vina appears and he's like really thrown back. And he has this conversation with her. He turns and has a conversation with Burnham through the projection of the Telosians. I just feel like that the whole way that scene is like just perfect. So yeah, I went with the memory serves too. Okay. Writing, best teleplay. Same 5 nominees. If memory serves, New Eden, A Noble for Sharon, Project Daedalus, and Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, we talked about last week. I felt like some of the lines of dialogue I may have preferred not to have, but at the same time, it's certainly balancing a whole lot of stuff, a lot of action, a lot of character stuff, moving the story forward, paying off a lot of big things for the season. So I felt like there were enough moments in it for the characters. There was enough there to warrant a nomination. Project Daedalus, a lot of there's one-on-one scenes. I feel like with Spock and Burnham and Spock and Stamets. There's so many great small scenes in it that aren't small. They're not small. They're huge. They really do move the story of the season forward. But in comparison to some of the stuff we're used to in Discovery, especially, they're really kind of quiet and pulled back and concerned only with character. And I love all that stuff. A Noble for Sharon. I love the way it uses its ensemble. I feel like every actor has really good stuff to do in it. It highlights all the characters. It moves the characters forward. And it's an old school Star Trek throwback in some Discovery and others. I feel like it's a great episode, really well written. New Eden, like I said, is old school Star Trek to its bones. Big ideas being debated and talked about. And if memory serves, I feel like I'll talk to my pick, but it balances like those really cool fan servicey moments that it does with Telosians and Talos 4, along with real character movement for the characters. Like, it's not just about that. It's really about Spock and Burnham, coming to terms with their rift, and Pike. It's kind of like the middle act for Pike. It's kind of like the reminder, pull him back to where he's ultimately going to. At the end of the day, at the end of his story, I think it does a really cool job of acting as that middle, pivot moment for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the twisty turny stuff with Section 31. I love the ending, the the trick out by the Telosians to save Spock and Burnham. I think that's really cool stuff. Really well written, really well paid off. But what do you think when you think of writing? Which one's you?
I think my pick is Oval for Sharon because I like to reward classic writing, but also kind of like a modern twist. And I think that, again, like you said, I think that they did a great job of everyone has something to do. There's different languages involved. It's beautifully paced as far as I don't know. The episode goes, but I don't know. That's my pick for sure.
Yeah, it's probably my second choice. If I had to go, not if memory serves, I think A Noble for Sharon would be my choice,
right?
Because of how many things it does and how it uses its ensemble. I think that's what I think of when I think of that episode. It's clearly like a Saru episode in a lot of ways. Like he's clearly front and center, but Tilly and Stamets and Reno get great things to do. Burnham's busy in it. She's got a lot to do. It's got some great Pike stuff.
Yep.
It really does make excellent use of its cast.
Yes.
And I definitely appreciate when Star Trek does that. It remembers that it's got that ensemble. And this show is no different cast. And sometimes, like in old Star Trek, and certainly no different. A lot of episodes, hone in on a character or two characters, and the other ones are kind of in the background. It's always nice when you get one that really puts them all on sort of level playing field, and they're all busy. And Noble for Sharon's like a classic example of that, I think. But my choice is if memory serves. I think it balances that. Playing with canon, continuity, TOS reference stuff. That I feel like it was such a minefield waiting and getting the temptation to be too fan servicey and focus on maybe the wrong things that are cute and fun to play with, but are not necessarily in service to your own story with Discovery. But I feel like it plays that game and balances those two things about as well as you possibly could. So I'll go with the memory serves. Then we got two more, and then best episode, three more. Two acting categories and episode. We're going to go with best guest star. So guest stars are anybody who it doesn't appear in the main credits, and that actually Michelle Yeoh would count as a guest star because it says special guest star or whatever her credit is. She's not a credited series regular. So anybody, even if they are like very recurring, heavy recurring, like Ethan Peck, who's on here, he would count as guest star the same way that Andrew Moody does for New Eden, who appeared once this season. So this can get kind of dicey with a show like Discovery and like Deep Space Nine was too, because you have all these recurring characters who are really beefy and thick characters. But you also have Samji Son from Perpetual Infinity, for example, who plays Burnham's mother, and Andrew Moody, who plays Jeremiah, I want to say his name is. Of course, I'm blanking on his name. In New Eden. And then you have three more recurring options here. You have Hannah Cheeseman, who played Ariam in Project Daedalus, Ethan Peck as Spock, obviously, in Project Daedalus, and Tig Notaro as Jet Reno in A Noble for Sharon. So, real quick, obviously, and Andrew Moody are obvious. They're one episode. But Hannah Cheeseman is obvious for Project Daedalus. That's obviously the Arian episode. Tig Notaro is in a handful of episodes in Discovery, but I love her banner with Stamets in A Noble for Sharon. I love the way she handles Tilly in that episode. I love her. I feel like that's her operating at peak and most involved in the story. She's got great moments in episodes like Such Sweet Sorrow, both parts, and Through the Valley of Shadows, and in Brother, obviously, but. She's the most involved in like the natural progression of the story, I think, in A Noble for Sharon. So that felt like a right choice.
Agreed.
And in Spock with Ethan Peck and Project Daedalus, I went with that one. That's kind of his first episode is fully for the entirety of the episode, and the chess scene with Burnham, kind of talking about their history and where Spock stands right now at that point in the show. I think that's him at his best. He's certainly. I guess my first question to you with this category, before you even go to pick is what. I'm kind of maybe putting you on the spot. I should have asked you this before, but if you were going to pick an episode for Ethan Peck, I don't even know if you would nominate Ethan Peck. But assuming you would, is there an episode that comes to mind for you as the one that you would pick for Ethan Peck, since he is such a big part of
something that kind of came to mind, maybe as my like honorable mention for Ethan Peck, because he does have a lot of strong moments, but maybe part two, just because I feel like it's a especially in the shuttlecraft. I feel like that moment is such a culmination of
so true
their struggles throughout the episode. I think he plays that perfectly in such a Spock way that I think that again, like he brings more. He brings classic Spock, but with this twist. So I think that would maybe be my second episode. But yeah, you mentioned the chess scene. It's super powerful for sure.
Yeah. Such Would Sorrow Part 2 would definitely be my second choice.
Yeah.
If we're talking which Ethan Peck performance to go with. I think he's really good in If Memory Serves too. He's not really coherent for maybe a quarter of it, but once he comes to life, I think
comes to life.
he really comes to life, and he's really good right off the bat. So there's a couple different really good choices I think for him as Spock. I went with the one I was most impressed with early on, though. I feel like Project Daedalus is the moment where I was like, yeah, he's Spock. I can buy him. But he's uniquely Spock. Like, he's unique to Spock at that point in his life. I feel like he etched out his own territory as Spock in that episode. But Such Would Sorrow Part 2 there's some great stuff. The stuff in the shuttlecraft is really, really powerful stuff. But what do you think of these nominees? Is there somebody off that you hear? And what would your choice be?
I mean, I think they're all great picks. But where's Kenneth Mitchell? He played like 3 characters. Like he had to get on there somehow. No, I think that all these are, what I would have picked for sure. So I'm just joking about Kenneth Mitchell, even though
Kenneth Mitchell was
he is great
for Through the Valley of Shadows. As that Klingon monk. He's definitely. He was in the conversation for sure. He's
definitely
awesome.
Honorable mention for sure. That's
for
what
sure.
I'll say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just jump right into my pick. This is probably one of the easiest picks that I've had to make. It's Ethan Peck. I think that he had the courage to kind of step into a character that is so iconic, and I feel like he didn't even bat an eyelash. He did a great job, as I said numerous times, of having that classic Spock, look and feel. I'll say, but he definitely brought his own spin to it. So he was definitely, I think, perfect Spock, perfect performance.
Yeah. Real quick, Rob's in the chat, and he says it's really hard to pick best guest star, but he would go Eastman. She made him feel so emotional despite not knowing her for that long, and that's a testament to her skill as an actor. Absolutely. Not to mention that she's doing it in true classic Star Trek fashion. She's doing it behind like heavy prosthetics.
Yes.
She doesn't have the benefit of her own face. She can't do traditional facial expression. She's doing it all through, body language and, her voice. Really, I mean, she does a lot in that episode. And I'll be honest, she's my runner-up. She's my choice.
Right.
She's really tight with Ethan Peck. For me, I did go with Ethan Peck just because of the sheer kind of audacity of that that task to have to play Spock differently, but in a way that you can feel the connection to what Spock would ultimately become, and I feel like it's just so integral to the story of the show has been to this point, like to finally get that payoff. Like there's been so much talk of Spock and Burnham's relationship up to that point this season, and just knowing that's where it fits into this whole thing, going back to and there's been so many questions about like what does that look like, what does it all mean. This was such a huge payoff for the show to see Spock and to get a feel for what that dynamic is like. So and I think Ethan Peck just did just such a perfect job of making that work. And in Project Daedalus, I think when I think of that episode, I certainly think of the Arian stuff and those last 10 minutes, especially. But I think my favorite scene in that episode, and one of my favorites, season and the entire series to this point is Burnham and Spock playing chess and talking about their relationship. And the tension in that scene and how much kind of anger and bubbling up, resentment there is there. It's just really, really well done. Really, really dense, rich character stuff that is the stuff that makes Discovery good and really make it really go. So I did go with Ethan Peck, but Hannah Cheeseman was really hard to walk away from. And I think if I had to go with a third pick, like a bronze trophy, or a bronze medal, I'd probably go with maybe Tig Notaro. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I could easily. I feel like just like Deep Space Nine. A lot of the time, I feel like the guys who come in and do one episode, like Samji Son and Andrew Moody, kind of are at a disadvantage. Against these other actors who have had more time to build a character and we get more of. But those are the two one-off appearances that stood out to me the most for sure.
Yeah.
So Ethan Peck, we agree, is our pick, and Rob is holding up Hannah Cheeseman as she should be. I'm glad she got a mention because she's freaking awesome in that episode for all those reasons. So series lead. Actors can be nominated more than once here. As long as it's different. As you can see, Cynic Martin Green's on there twice. So any actor that's in the main credits as a series regular is eligible and can be nominated for as many episodes as you see fit. So I have Doug Jones for A Noble for Sharon, Sonequa Martin Green for Perpetual Infinity, Sonequa Martin Green for Project Daedalus, Anson Mount for Through the Valley of Shadows, and Anthony Rapp for Saints of Imperfection. Sonequa Martin Green, those two episodes, I feel like I could have gone with a whole list of them, especially in the back end of the season. I think she's amazing in The Red Angel, especially in those last 10 minutes. She's amazing in both parts of the finale, I think. She's great in Brother. Light and Shadow. Sonequa Martin Green is obviously you can almost pick any episode and have a good pick for her. Doug Jones, it was a tough call between that and The Sound of Thunder. The Sound of Thunder obviously is an episode that is like really built on Saru and does a lot with that character, but I think A Noble for Sharon, you get Saru in such a different light and you learn a lot about the Kelpian background, and you see him in a different emotional place than you're used to seeing him in. There's a big arc in that episode for him. So I went with that for him. Anthony Rapp in Saints of Perfection, I feel like is his high watermark for the season. I'm thinking of his scene with Wilson Cruz at the end where he doesn't think he's going to be able to bring Culber with him through the network. He's got a great monologue talking to him in that moment. I'm thinking of the beginning portion of the episode, even before in the equation, his determination to get Tilly back is equally powerful. I think he's at his peak in that particular episode this season. And then Anson Mount, for the longest time this season, I thought it was going as the choice for him as the episode I think he's strongest in, but obviously Through the Valley of Shadows is the Pike episode. Really monumental stuff for that character, for that actor. So that was an easy call for me. The only choice was, does Anson Mount get 2 nominations? Does he get one for New Eden or Such Sweet Sorrow? One of the 2 parts. You could easily make a case, I think, that he's deserving for one of them. But I guess a couple questions for you. Obviously, what do you think of the group as a whole? But Sonequa Martin Green, are there other episodes that she was more deserving for? The reason I picked those 2, Project Daedalus, she's got some really big emotional stuff with Ariam at the end of that episode. Her big scenes with Spock, she's really getting put through the emotional ringer in that.
Right.
And then Perpetual Infinity is obviously the episode that's about her relationship with her mother. She has those great scenes with Samji Son. So they're the 2 that stood out for me. But are there other episodes that you feel like she deserves a citation for? And obviously, did I miss anybody?
No, I don't think. I think those 2 episodes definitely fit as far as probably the 2 performances that I would highlight for sure for her. I don't think there's anyone off the list. I think that this is a pretty stout list. Just looking at it right now. Probably one of the toughest, probably my toughest pick, is this category. This category has always been tough because I feel like it's hard to put away the, who had the most to do than the best performances. So I definitely struggle with that, definitely looking at this category. So, yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, no, those episodes fit perfectly for her. And then I think I wouldn't add anyone, or you didn't miss anyone as far as nominations go. So,
yeah, of the series regulars, obviously I left off Mary Wiseman, who, I feel like Saints of Imperfection probably would have been the choice for her as well. Wilson Cruz, I probably would have picked if memory serves. That's the episode where he fights with Tyler and he's really struggling with his identity and where he fits. Who he is. Yeah. I think he's got some really good stuff in that episode. And for Shazad Latif, I feel like Through the Valley of Shadows, maybe his reunion with Laurel and dealing with, his son on Borith. Certainly Point of Light. The Red Angel, I feel like he's in a really tough spot with Section 3 Leland. He's got some good stuff this season, but not enough to kick any of these other performances out, as far as I'm concerned. Rob is saying Anson Mount easily be his pick. He managed to encapsulate everything Star Trek, being a captain in one season. He's brave, kind, decent, honorable, funny, and noble. Still manages to be human and fallible. And he says, even as a heterosexual male, even he can appreciate how suave and handsome Anson Mount is.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen, Rob.
Yeah, no argument from us. Anson Mount has been, I think, I can speak for Dan, our man crush for, what has it been, 4 months now?
Yeah,
since
4 months.
Since Brother. Yep. It's that's a pretty easy call. But who's your pick, Dan?
My pick is Anson Mount. I think it's tough not to go with Sonequa Martin Green because she does have a lot to do and she has a bunch of great performances. But I think that this season, looking at this season, it's got to be Anson Mount for sure, for me at least.
I went with Anson Mount too. Everything Rob said, he encapsulates what Star Trek is. He establishes it in one season. Sonequa Martin Green, as amazing as she is, and if you put a phaser in my head and ask me who the best actor in the show is, I would.
Right.
But she's had the benefit of building this character for 2 years and has a lot to do in every episode, and has slowly gotten to really, build this up. And I think Anson Mount, in one season, has accomplished a ton. And very, kind of similar to what I was saying with If Memory. It walks that line between like playing with the continuity and being connective tissue between new and old, with TOS and Discovery. But he tells his own story. I feel like you get of newness and new wrinkles to make the whole Enterprise worth exploring. Like bringing Pike back was well served. That they got something out of it beyond just being cute with the fans. And a lot of that credit goes to Anson Mount. And in that episode in particular, that's certainly like the culmination of, the idea of bringing Pike back and being that middle act for, what happened to him between the cage and where he ends up in the menagerie. And we get a little taste of that. And yeah, that scene, the scene where he gets his flashback or his flash forward and sees his future is impossible to walk away from. Yes. I mean, that is like the acting moment of the season. I think. So this was a pretty easy call. I knew it the night that episode aired that was going to be the done deal.
Yeah.
And in rewatching the season after I saw it for the first time, it stayed true. I didn't change my mind. Rob says the second choice would be Doug Jones. In I guess a Noble for Sharon. What was your runner-up pick?
It's Sonequa Martin Green, just because, again, I have to keep coming back to, again, similar to Anson Mount, Sonequa Martin Green shows her great range of, she can see, like, she has this really, like, deep emotional moments, with her family and her mother and brother and Spock and all that. So but she also has this she embodies this Starfleet officer who's, I don't know, awesome and fighting the enemy and doing all these things. So I think she has great range along with Anson Mount. So I think that's my runner-up for sure.
What's the episode? What episode would you pick?
For her?
Yeah.
It's Project Daedalus. Because, again, you have that kind of fine walk between emotional but also kind of like this, I don't know, action-y, like adventure kind of character-esque, I guess.
I think of that scene. I remember mentioning it when it aired, like on our recap of it. There's right after that chess scene where she really goes at it with Spock, and Spock leaves her in her quarters, and Pike calls her to the bridge, and she just the look on her face, like putting it together and like
flips the lights back.
It's really incredible stuff. Yeah, really great performance. So that's probably mine too. I'm torn between Doug Jones and
right.
That night I thought for sure, I was like, that's it. That's gonna be the series lead winner. So I don't know. I might be with you, Rob, but I might be with you too, Dan. I don't know. I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it because I was so confident in the winner as being Anson Mount for that episode. So lots of time to think about it moving forward, like how to stack these. When I rewatch it for the 900th time, I'm sure I'll maybe figure it out. Best episode. I have, if memory serves, New Eden, A Noble for Sharon, Project Daedalus, Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. I feel like we talked about all 5 of these episodes throughout these nominations. Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2 is obviously the finale, the action stuff. It's got big character stuff. It sets the course for what the rest of the show is going to be. It pays off a lot of things. Project Daedalus is that balance between big action, big character. New Eden's a throwback to classic Star Trek. A Noble for Sharon is a throwback to classic Star Trek, but a perfect use of the ensemble as a whole. If memory serves, is like Discovery in a nutshell. It's playing with continuity. It's doing new things. It's giving context to original Star Trek while expanding continuity on its own. Telling its own story. So they are my 5 favorite episodes of the season. What do you think? Did I leave one out? Is there one that's missing that should be there? What would be kicked out if it was up to you to fill that spot with whatever I missed?
All right.
And what's your pick?
I have trouble with New Eden. I'll put my troubles with New Eden aside. I definitely that's a good lineup for sure. I think they're all strong episodes. I think they're all well deserving of this kind of award. But there's kind of one that kind of just stands above them all. So. Okay. Yeah.
And that is.
That is. I will put up all the winners, a little bit more professional. So, let me just finish some. There we go. My winner is If Memory Serves.
Okay.
It's got everything. I think it's got this great blueprint that kind of Discovery has kind of made of where they take something classic from past Star Trek and kind of build on it, and I think they do a great job. I'm not saying every episode should be like that, right? I'm saying that they do a great job of building off of what we've seen before. So it has everything for me. It has action. It has emotional connections and turmoil and classic Star Trek, and it has everything. That's why it's my number 1. So
yeah, it's my number 1 too. That's my choice. Probably given away by some of the other wins that racked up for me in some of the other categories, some big categories. Yeah, it's all those things that you just said, like I said earlier, the way that it balances playing in the continuity and expanding context for the original show, and furthering, forwarding their story, developing the relationship between Spock and Burnham, and Burnham's place in the universe. I guess I think it does such a beautiful job of doing all things that it's the one, while also being visually spectacular. It's not just like flat television. It's cinematic. It's
Too,
huge.
yeah.
It's really impressive production.
Yep.
So it checks all the boxes for me. I think the best thing that it does, I think the highlight of the episode is the flashback to the rift between Spock and Burnham. I love the fact, and we talked about this when it aired, that it's simple, that it's not overly complicated, and not this big contrived situation that happened. It's words. It's things Burnham said to Spock that were damaging and that stick with Spock for the rest of his life, that you see through the context of the original series.
Right.
Things Spock struggles with. The reason Spock wants, like, Spock has always wanted that that human anchor to help him with his identity that Kirk ultimately becomes and McCoy ultimately becomes. Burnham was that for a brief time in his childhood, lost it, and has been upset about that for years and feels like it was taken from him. And I think Jim from Trek Ranks had on a recent episode was talking about, there's a scene in Bread and Circuses in TOS where McCoy is like psychoanalyzing Spock, talking about how he's so afraid to slip up and show any humanity at all. And Spock's just sitting there silently, like kind of taking it in. And like things like that, when things like that happen, it's kind of impossible to watch that now, thinking of that scene between Spock and Burnham.
Yes.
And how harmed he is by these kinds of words, these kinds of pointed attacks on his identity, and how he's struggling with it himself. So to me, it's like the poster child for why Discovery. This is like mission accomplished for Star Trek Discovery, at least to this point. So that's why it's my choice. It's my favorite episode of the series, going back to season 1 as well. It's the episode that I think I'll have the time just kind of popping in and watching randomly, which I don't do very often, but it's the one that I feel like I'll feel good about doing that, and it'll be all for me to do. So yeah, that's my number 1 for sure. Rob's in the chat. He's saying this is a tough one. He loves Sound of Thunder, if memory serves. He loves Project Daedalus, but he's going with Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2. Awesome battle scene. It was DS9 Dominion-esque in its scale, seeing the Enterprise and its bridge, all that good stuff. And it's true. It's there's a lot of good choices here. The sacrifice of Admiral Cornwell, who he really liked, he's saying also played into that choice. Totally a worthy call, I think. I think a lot of these are good. Good choices, and I feel good about these 5. And what would you replace New Eden with?
I don't know. Probably Project Daedalus. Did it get nominated?
That's in there.
Oh, okay. Then let me see here. I guess let's just bring up our rankings.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Give me a second here.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So here is Bill's rankings, and then we'll go on to the Twitter rankings as well. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't take it out, because when I look down the line, as far as kind of the next episode, maybe Through the Valley of Shadows might be up there. Mm-hmm. The Sound of Thunder is definitely up there for me, but I feel like New Eden has to be nominated, just because I feel like I gotta put my my dislikes aside, because the front half of that episode is very strong. So I guess it would be nominated for me because of that front half. I just have a problem with maybe the last scene. So it definitely is a great episode. I will say that for sure.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I'll point out about these is that I have never revealed. Right, I've done I've put out preliminary rankings before over the course of the season. I would put them out every so often as rough drafts, but I've never put letter grades on these episodes until publicly, at least until now. And I'll just say this: please remember that even a D+ in Star Trek is better than most TV for me. So, like, yeah, Point of Light I feel like is on the lower scale of, and certainly on the lower scale of Discovery, but I'll still watch it 100 million times over the course of my life, I'm sure. So, yeah, I have respect for all of them to some extent, but this is how I stack up the season. Episodes like The Red Angel, Light and Shadows, even Point of Light, they suffer for me maybe as episodes that feel like they're those like bridge episodes. They
connect
they're moving the story forward
along
to some extent, but there's not a lot. Maybe there's less like individual notable elements to them,
but they're necessary to keep the story moving.
Sure, right. Yeah. They're essential for the serialized format, and they do things that are moving the story forward for sure. And each one of them have to them that are individual, feel unique to those stories, but maybe a little less so than some others for me at least. Right. I can say that episodes that are a little further up on the real focus on the daughter, the reveal of her mother, that elevates the episode for me. The Sound of Thunder, so much depth in the Kelpian Baul dynamic, getting to dive into that rises that episode a little bit. Sound of Thunder or Through the Valley of Shadows plus it's I probably would knock it down a little bit. I certainly a lot of the stuff on the Section 31 ship, but
right.
Quite as well as the I feel like that's the noticeable like dip off in that episode from the Pike, and even like Laurel and Tyler stuff I think works better than the Section 31 control Spock Burnham stuff. Yeah.
Bringing up the Twitter rankings here, very similar. I think Bills was a 3.1 with the final average. Twitter is a little bit higher on that with a 3.4.
So the way these work, real quick, just for anybody if you're watching and you're kind of curious about like what these numbers mean, is this is after each episode I always put that asks you to grade the episode A, B, C, D, or F. And essentially what that does is if you give it an A, it's a 4, and if you give it a D or an F, it's a 1. And I take when the poll closes, I'll do the math and figure out, how many votes went to each thing, and it averages out to this. So this is the episodes ranked by those results from those polls.
Yeah. The thing that kind of jumps out at me between the two is if we look at Bills. Look where Brother is.
Yeah.
Brother is 10 on Bills, and on the Twitter, it's 3. So whether that be maybe it's the first episode of the season, that might play a part of it. But I think I'm just interested in seeing that big of a difference.
Yeah, I noticed this last season. What I did last year is I did this. Was aired. Right. And then about a year later, maybe 6 months later, when I hit it in the rewatch, I did it the traditional way. Like I would just kind of post the poll randomly when I hit it in the rewatch.
Yeah.
And those results were different. So I'm sure, newness syndrome. Yeah. Everybody's subject to that. Yeah. And season premiere. People are excited, and you don't have the context of the whole season yet. It probably lifts that episode up maybe a little bit. And the thing that interests me about the Twitter poll results is the finale being kind of further down the list. And I kind of figured that. I mean, if you read Twitter and you follow along with people, so it didn't universally wow everybody. Yeah. The finale left questions for people, and some people are struggling with where the show's left off and how it ended. So I don't want to say I'm surprised. Part 1, part 2, or 11 and 13, 14 on the Twitter poll results. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that about does it for me, for my part in all this. Anything else you want to share? Any
I don't think so. I think that was. I think I definitely had a great time with the Trekkie Awards as always. We're gonna be back next week with some non-Discovery content, so I'm super excited to kind of get back into the greater Star Trek universe and not just being really hyper focused on one season. So I'm really excited to see that. And if you guys have any ideas, show ideas that you want to see us cover, definitely drop those in the comments or come over to Twitter and get the conversation that started that way. Going into the summer, I got a lot of fun ideas. Our 100th episode is coming up, so we got a bunch of great plans for that. Got a bunch of rewatch parties and stuff planned, so it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Really excited to get back into. We obviously like Discovery on Trek Live, fans of the show, but 15 straight weeks of talking Discovery, we're not be boxed in to that conversation.
Yep.
Or being able to cover all the other shows and all the other stuff that Star Trek has to offer. So.
Yep.
Coming soon.
Yep. Thanks everybody for watching, tuning in. You guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Definitely come over to Twitter, Facebook, Discord channel, wherever. Keep it going.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, everybody.